Could we... Sorry, but could we just take a breather for a second here? Because that was a lot.
Sure. I mean, yeah, we earned it, I guess. 2 minutes.
Jesus! So, parentage is just moon gazing and yoga mats. That's good to know, I guess. They actually remind me of another group like them. The Migration? I remember when they were pitching tents in the 90s. But the actual act, the natural act, migration, pretty interesting. How baby birds do it instinctively. So sometimes programming, like bird programming, has a glitch. And birds will actually fly north, instead of south. And the ones that do, they hook up. And suddenly, we have a whole new generation of birds going the wrong way. I wonder about the other birds, the ones flying the natural way, when they see birds going in the opposite direction. And I just wonder how many of them change their mind, turn around. I wonder how many of them find a different way.
Right away, you know if this game is for you or not. Games like this have been around for a while now. Previous Oxenfree came out 7 years ago, and it was a good one. The sequel does not disappoint. Oxenfree 2 is a narrative-driven adventure game with a supernatural undertone. You'll quickly learn that the only thing scarier than space cults and transdimensional ghosts is growing old. It was developed by Night School Studio, makers of After Party, and is one of the first big titles published by Netflix Games. People have been hesitant about Netflix coming into the gaming space. This was a very hands-off approach, no forced exclusivity or aggressive advertising. The game released on all major consoles and PC, while Netflix gets their mobile versions, which are free for all Netflix subscribers. Honestly, I can't think of a better game for Netflix to publish. Oxenfree 2 nails this Stranger Things hyper-realistic world with unexplainable supernatural happenings. It's the type of game that you put on a podcast and sit back and play to unwind in the evening. Only the game provides the podcast. It's set 5 years after the events of Oxenfree 1. However, with a new protagonist with no knowledge of the events and a new area to explore, there's no real need to play the previous entry before this one. You play as Riley, a woman who's returned home to Kamina Coast after some time. She's got a job as a contractor for a research project investigating anomalous frequencies for a scientist named Evelyn. The core gameplay is walking around and talking to people. There's some exploration and time warping puzzles, even boss fights, but the majority of the game is choosing one of 3 dialogue options as you walk from one point to the other. These aren't binary choices of good or bad. The options are often what do you want to talk about or how much personal information do you want to give away. You're not filling meters as much as you're steering a conversation using your words to deal with problems. If you hadn't noticed, Oxenfree 2 looks amazing. Each frame is a painting. The game encourages you to stop and savor the moment, enjoy the journey as you traverse the scenic environments. The art style mixed with the lighting just adds to the quote-unquote immaculate vibes that the game gives off. And the music, oh, the frickin' music. The score by Scientific, or that's how I think it's pronounced, is so atmospheric. Listening to it brings you straight back to Kamina and Edwards Island. The game starts off with a brief introduction where you learn the basics, then it opens up. You explore Kamina in any order you please, with different events occurring based on which order you did things in. The game really doesn't hold your hand here. It's open enough to feel freeing, but not so obtuse that you get lost and don't know where to go. You can pull up your map at any point. Riley will scribble down important details or just general thoughts on the area. Then there's the supernatural elements. You tune into various frequencies with your radio, opening portals and messing with time. These puzzles are sprinkled around to keep the game varied and interesting. The time warps are also used as a narrative device, with Riley going back and forth to her future and past. You learn more about Riley as you play, the information affecting your decisions and how you play. Riley talks to most NPCs through her radio. Each have their own subplot, arc, and side quest. You can opt in and out by simply talking to them or not, but you definitely should, as there's really interesting stories going on, like Maria. She runs a teen advice radio station throughout the night. You can call her up for advice on the area and people in it. Keep talking to her and she'll be the one asking you for advice, and it's great. The person you'll be spending the most time with is Jacob, the other contractor hired by Evelyn. He's this humble loser who's never left Kamina, and you really get to know him over the course of the game. There's a couple of visual gags that play off your expectations or steer you one way and go the other. Their dynamic really works here, with Riley being incredibly competent but private, and Jacob being much less competent and a lot more open. Instead of helping him out with his crush, although stuff like that is in here, you help him with his fears of living an unremarkable life and dying without being remembered. Yeah, this game is sad, but not in a bawling your eyes sort of way. It's more subtle and mature. It tackles these kind of topics and forces introspection without you even realizing it. Oxenfree 1 focused on a group of teenagers who were all witty and sassy. The writing often didn't feel authentic, written by people who were very much not teens. However, the writing in Oxenfree 2 is so specific. It feels less like a dramatic adventure movie and more like two average people talking. You don't even realize when exposition is being dumped or an important character moment has just taken place. It just happens naturally. You'd be talking to Jacob just to fill the silence, and then an icon would appear telling you what you said mattered. Dialogue is seamless, there's no fail state. The game's got these hidden decisions and it just keeps going, unlike similar games which make a point of telling you when a branching path appears. The problem there is you don't realize how much you're affecting the story until the second playthrough, unlocking different conversations or missing whole entire moments. I got a radio transmission from one of the main antagonists where we just bonded over the love of good vests. It was a humanizing moment that made me care about them, which was missing in the second run. The conversation changed how I think about the character. We found some common ground. Not having it would have made me see them in a different light, affecting my decisions. It's a game designed to be replayed. You don't fully know yourself, Riley, until the end. Then there's the supernatural elements. The best way to describe it is that Oxenfree 2 is very patient with its horror, while still keeping its pacing. In movies and TV, the camera is close up and directed. Other narrative games have attempted to replicate the Hollywood horror movie. The biggest problem they've had is pacing, as the first third is traditionally boring character introductions and setup. This works in a 90-minute movie where the prelude is 30 minutes. In a 9-hour game, it's 3 hours where nothing happens. Oxenfree 2 doesn't really rely on cheap jump scares or poor pacing. Tension starts to build the second you start the game. Casually between small talk, Jacob mentions far-fetched ghost conspiracy theories. You run past remnants of a dangerous cult. Then Riley pops the cork. There's a general feeling of unease, running around the dimly lit woods, coming up against enemies you can neither understand nor stop, strange radio transmissions, warping back and forth through time. The horror is so carefully crafted within the limitations. Yeah, Oxenfree 2 is a good one. It's made by an immature generation for an immature generation. Riley embodies this going into her 30s, still uncertain, and Jacob even more so. The story holds itself back so it can seep into you, leaving the player thinking about it long after finishing it.
I like your vest, by the way. I could never find one I liked. That wasn't like $10,000.
Thrift store, actually. You'd be amazed what you can find in them.
With all the bedbugs I can eat, I'll bet. It's a shame we'll never be friends. I mean, aside from the fact that you're like 50 or whatever, they tell me you're dependable, reliable, have a big heart. Whatever that means. They say you're a real peach.
We could still be friends, you know. And I'm actually 100. I just have good genes.
No, we can't be friends. Not when I'm done here. It's too bad. I could never find anyone who liked vests as much as me. Maybe in the next life, you know? Maybe then all our dreams will come true and look great doing so. Maybe.